The night was drenched in the kind of rain that silences a city. Headlights blurred against the wet glass as luxury cars sliced through the storm, their tires hissing against the asphalt. Inside one of them, sleek, black and spotless, sat Ethan Cole, a billionaire whose empire reached farther than his conscience ever had. His eyes were cold, unfazed by the world outside. To him, rain wasn't tragedy. It was simply weather. But then, at the intersection of 5th and Greystone, the light turned red. And for the first time in years, Ethan looked outside. Under a flickering street lamp, a little girl stood, barefoot, shivering, no older than 8. Her hair was tangled with rainwater, her cheeks pale, her small hands clutching a piece of cardboard. The words, handwritten in shaky black ink, read, "Please not for me, for my mom." Ethan's assistant glanced over and scoffed. "Another scammer, sir. They use kids now, it's disgusting." Ethan nodded absently. But something about the way the girl's eyes met his through the fogged window made his pulse skip. They weren't begging eyes. They were desperate, pleading. As if she recognized him, he pressed a button. The tinted window hummed as it lowered, letting in a gust of icy rain. "Hey," he said, his voice oddly soft. "Where are your parents?" The girl hesitated, then stepped closer, her shoes squelching in a puddle. "I don't need money," she whispered. "I just need you to read this." Before Ethan could respond, she reached up with trembling fingers and slipped a small folded note through the open window. Then, without another word, she turned and ran into the dark, vanishing between 2 alleyways swallowed by the storm. Ethan blinked. "Wait!" he shouted, pushing the door open, but his assistant grabbed his arm. "Sir, don't, she's gone." "Let's go." The light turned green. The driver hesitated, then pressed the accelerator. The car slid back into motion, leaving the flickering lamppost and the memory of that small figure behind. Inside the limousine, the only sound was the rhythmic tick of the rain against the roof. Ethan turned the note over in his hand. It was wet, smudged and torn at the corners, but the handwriting was unmistakably innocent, written in the uneven scrawl of a child. Slowly he opened it. "Dear Mr. Cole, my mother said you once loved her before you left. Please come back before it's too late." And at the bottom, in smaller letters, Lily Harper. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, the entire car seemed to go silent. Lily Harper, a name buried under a decade of boardrooms, contracts, and cold ambition. A name that once meant warmth, laughter, and a future. The woman he had promised forever to, before success became his only love. But that note, those words, "Please come back before it's too late." Too late for what? He slammed his hand against the glass partition.
"Turn around, now!"
The driver stuttered. "Sir, the girl's gone." "It's pouring out there. We won't—" "I said turn around!" Ethan barked. The limousine screeched as it swung into a U-turn, headlights slicing through sheets of rain. Ethan scanned every corner, every alley, desperate for a glimpse of the small figure. The assistant muttered under his breath, "This is insane." But Ethan didn't care. For the first time in years, something inside him burned, a feeling he thought money had erased. Regret. The rain hit harder now, like punishment from the heavens. Water streamed down the windshield, distorting the world outside into trembling streaks of light. And then, a small shape appeared ahead, a blanket, torn, soaked, lying abandoned on the pavement. Ethan jumped out before the car even stopped, the cold rain slapping against his face. He picked up the blanket, clutching it tight as if it were proof she had been real. "Where are you?" he whispered, scanning the shadows. "Where did you go?" But the alleys were empty. Only the echo of raindrops replied. He sank to his knees, the note still in his hand, ink bleeding further with every drop that hit it. His assistant stepped out, holding an umbrella, unsure whether to help or stay silent. Ethan's voice trembled. "Find me everything on a woman named Lily Harper. Now." The assistant hesitated. "Lily Harper? Sir, that's from before the company, isn't it?" Ethan didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the small folded paper, his empire's worth of wealth suddenly meaningless beside a child's handwriting. He climbed back into the car, drenched and pale. The driver glanced at him through the mirror, but said nothing. Ethan's reflection stared back, haunted, broken, and very small for a man who owned half the city. The thunder rolled across the skyline as the car pulled away. Ethan unfolded the note once more, his fingers trembling. The ink had almost vanished. but he could still make out the words that shattered him. Please come back before it's too late. He looked out the rain-streaked window. Somewhere out there, in the dark, was a little girl who knew his name. A little girl whose mother once loved him. And maybe, just maybe, she was his. The thunder cracked above, echoing like judgment. Ethan gripped the note tighter, his mind spinning. Could she be my daughter? He whispered under his breath. The limousine disappeared into the storm, leaving behind a city still, drowning in rain, and one unanswered question that would soon change Ethan Cole's entire life. If you believe that no amount of wealth can ever replace love or family, share this story and remind others what truly matters. The city never truly sleeps, but tonight its heartbeat was slower, colder. The streets were empty, except for the echo of tires slicing through puddles as Ethan Cole's limousine drifted through the forgotten side of town. The note lay crumpled in his hand, the ink faded, but the words burned into his mind. Please come back before it's too late. He had searched through every shelter, every underpass, every dark corner where hope usually fades. And just as dawn began to bleed through the storm clouds, a voice broke through the silence. You're looking for a little girl? Asked a woman in a soaked volunteer vest. Brown hair, old blanket? Ethan's heart nearly stopped. Yes, you've seen her. The woman nodded softly. She stays with her mother, out past the old industrial district. A small house at the edge of the city. But she hesitated, her eyes darkening. Her mom's been sick for a long time. Ethan didn't wait for more. Take me there. The limousine turned onto a road long forgotten by wealth. The towers of glass and steel behind him disappeared into a skyline of broken windows and rusted fences. The world he ruled during the day had no place here. When the car stopped, Ethan stepped out into silence. The house before him looked more like a skeleton. Its walls cracked, its roof sagging, its front door hanging crooked. The wind carried the faint hum of something electrical inside. He pushed the door open. It creaked, a sound that seemed to echo years of sorrow. Inside, the air was thick, warm but heavy with the scent of medicine and dust. In the dim light, he saw her. The little girl sat beside a narrow cot, holding the hand of a frail woman whose chest rose and fell unevenly. A small medical machine hummed softly beside them, its wires tangled and old. Mom, the girl whispered. The man from the picture came. Ethan froze. The picture. He remembered it now. In the note, the handwriting wasn't alone. There had been a faint drawing in the corner, a smiling woman and a tall man beside a little girl. His heart clenched. The woman on the cot stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, and for a brief moment, the years vanished. Even in weakness, Lily Harper was beautiful. Ethan, she breathed. He stepped closer, his throat dry. Lily. She raised a trembling hand, stopping him. Don't. I told her. If you ever came back, you'd find your heart again. Tears blurred his vision. The little girl looked between them, her wide eyes filled with confusion. And something else. Hope. Ethan knelt beside the cot, taking Lily's cold hand in his. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice cracking. I left when I should have stayed. I thought I was chasing success. But I was just running from love. Lily smiled faintly, a tear sliding down her pale cheek. You didn't run from love, Ethan, you just forgot what it looked like. For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the soft beep of the machine and the sound of rain still whispering against the roof. Then, Ethan moved. With trembling fingers, he pulled out his phone and called his private doctor. Send an emergency team. Now. Bring everything you can. He hung up and turned back to Lily. Help is coming. You'll be okay, Lily, I promise. But Lily's eyes told a different story. She looked at her daughter and brushed a strand of wet hair from the girl's face. You already saved me, she said faintly. You came back. Her breathing slowed. The room grew impossibly still. Lily, Ethan whispered, gripping her hand tighter. Stay with me. Please. But her eyes had already drifted upward, peaceful, calm, as if she was seeing something far beyond the broken ceiling above them. The machine let out a long, soft tone, and just like that, she was gone. The little girl buried her face in Ethan's shoulder, her small body trembling with silent sobs. He wrapped his arms around her, feeling the weight of a decade of regret pressed down on him. In that single moment, the billionaire became a father, not by blood, but by heart. as dawn spilled through the cracked windows. The ambulance lights flickered outside, but it was too late. Ethan stood at the doorway, the note still in his hand. The same words he'd read 100 times now hit him differently. Please come back before it's too late. For Lily, it was too late. But for the little girl, there was still time. Weeks later, the skyline of the city glittered under a new sunrise. Cameras flashed, reporters gathered, and a tall man stood at a podium outside a brand new building with silver letters engraved across the front. The Lily Foundation, for mothers and children in need. Ethan's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. This foundation is not about wealth or power. It's about redemption and love. The kind of love that doesn't fade even when time and mistakes try to erase it. The crowd applauded softly, but Ethan wasn't looking at them. He looked down at the small girl standing beside him, dressed in a simple white dress, holding his hand tightly. "Are you proud of Mom?" she asked quietly. He smiled, softly, painfully. More than she'll ever know. Together they released white balloons into the sky. The crowd watched in silence as the wind carried them upward, disappearing into the sunlight. As the last balloon vanished, Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. "You gave me everything I never deserved." The little girl squeezed his hand and smiled through her tears. "She said you'd come back, Daddy." And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole, the billionaire once feared for his power, closed his eyes and wept. Not from guilt, but from grace. If you believe that one small act of kindness can heal even the deepest wounds, tell us in the comments what second chances mean to you.